So in this last video, we will discuss the 11th method of acquiring ownership. This method is called transfer, and we already explained that transfer has three requirements. The first is a valid title, so a sales agreement, a gift, or an exchange. The second requirement is authority, meaning the person who is transferring the thing needs to have a legal right to do so. And the third requirement is delivery, meaning that thing or that property which is being transferred needs to be handed over to the new owner. So now we're going to talk about the methods of delivery, which is the third requirement for transfer. Remember, the important point that you have to remember for the exam is that transfer occurs once all these three requirements have been met. So the moment all three requirements are met, then we say that from that moment on, the transfer is complete and ownership has been transferred to the new owner. So now we will discuss the methods of delivery, these 6 methods here, starting with registered property. So the first method of delivering property under transfer is delivery through registered property. So registered property is when, for example, you are delivering things such as a ship, an aeroplane. When you buy an aeroplane, it has to be delivered to you. And a building. When you buy a building has to be delivered to you. So obviously, you need to draw a deed. So a deed is a document that states in short that you are now the new owner. And then that property, so that ship or plane or building, has to be registered in a public register. So normally you go to a notary, and the notary will draw the deed and will also go and register that property in a public register. So this is the first method of delivery. Registered property is considered to be delivered once a deed has been drawn and that property has been registered in the public register. But remember, there also has to have still been a valid title, and there also has to have been authority. Moving on to the second method of delivery. The second method of delivery is called Traditio, brevi, manu. This is a Latin word which means delivery by the shorthand. So obviously, as you can see, you need to remember the Latin term for purposes of the exam. So Traditio, brevi, manu is when A alienates goods to B and B previously held the goods for A, and the mere consent of the parties suffices to deliver the goods. So what I mean here is, this is Avis. Avis rents out cars. Avis is A, and this is a factory, and the factory borrowed a car from Avis, right? So this is an Avis car which was borrowed by this factory for a couple of months. Then this factory decides that they want to buy this car after all. So it would be foolish, of course, if once they signed the agreement and the Avis had authority to sell the car, it would be foolish for the factory to first take back the car to Avis and then have the car delivered officially to them. That would be foolish and a waste of time. So what would happen in this case is the factory, who was first a detentor because they were renting the car from Avis, will simply take money and give the money to Avis. They sign up an agreement, they sign the agreement, and then the detentor will immediately become the owner. So simply by mutual agreement, the factory moves from being a detentor of the car into being an owner of the car. So it simply means that the factory previously held the car for Avis, but simply by a mutual agreement and payment, of course, the factory now becomes owner. So they have acquired ownership of the car through transfer because delivery has happened by the shorthand. Traditio, brevi, manu. The third method for delivery is called traditio longa manu. This is delivery by the long hand. What it means here is that there's a previous owner. So this owner used to own this apartment. So these guys who live in the apartment, they are tenants, right? And we said that tenants are called detentors or holders because they are holding the apartment on behalf of the owner. Now she's old and she wants to retire. So what does she do? She sells the apartment to the new owner. So the new owner has the apartment delivered to her by traditio longa manu, meaning that she becomes the new owner of the apartment without having to move the tenants out. So it means that by mutual agreement, ownership of the apartment moves from the previous owner to the new owner, and they simply have to notify the tenants that you guys now pay the rent to the new owner. So in that case, we say that the apartment has been delivered to the new owner simply by agreement between the previous owner and the new owner, while the detentors are still holding the apartment, but now they're holding the apartment for a different owner. We call this traditio longa manu. The fourth method of delivery is Constitutum possessorium. Constitutum possessorium means that one party, in this case we call him the seller, had these pipes in his warehouse. He owned these pipes in his warehouse. Then the other party, the buyer, decided to buy these pipes. In normal circumstances, he would then take the pipes to his own warehouse. But in this case, as you can see, the warehouse of the buyer is not yet complete. He still needs to add a door. So he asks the seller to hold the pipes until his shop or his warehouse is ready. So what does that mean? That means that the seller, who was once the owner of the pipes, has now become the detentor or the holder of the pipes because he's now holding them on behalf of the buyer, who is now the new owner of these pipes. So constitutum possessorium is when the possessor, the seller, alienates goods to the buyer or to another party, but still the possessor continues to hold the goods, except that now his intention has changed. Whereas at first his intention was to be the owner of the goods, now after the transfer, he becomes the detentor of the goods or the holder of the goods on behalf of the buyer. We call this Constitutum possessorium. Very important. Remember this. The fifth method of delivery under transfer is Traditio symbolica. So this means delivery of a symbol representing the thing. In this case, you have a bunch of keys. Normally, a key is a symbol of something. So it's a symbol of a house or a symbol of a car or a symbol of a plane or whatever. So in this case, you deliver a thing by giving the new owner keys to that thing. So if you sell a house, you deliver that house by simply giving the new owner a bunch of keys for that house. So by simply giving the owner the keys, you have delivered those keys. You have delivered that house to the new owner. And that's the method of delivery called Traditio symbolica. And finally, you have acquisition of ownership you have the method of delivery number 6, which is factual transfer of possession. So factual transfer is exactly what it is. This is the normal method that we use every day, where you actually are given possession of the thing that you have bought. So delivery takes place very literally, where the new cell phone is handed over to the new owner. So we say it has been factually transferred, factual transfer of the possession to the new owner. So remember, with these requirements for transfer, the day on which the transfer took place is the day on which all 3 requirements for transfer were realized. So remember these requirements for transfer: valid title, authority, and delivery. So if all these 3 things are present, then we say that the transfer has been successfully carried out. So we come back again to registered property. If a question asks you when the transfer was complete or when the person acquired ownership, it was the day on which all 3 requirements of transfer were realized. So was there a sales agreement? Yes, it happened on this day. Did the people who sold the thing have authority to sell it? Yes, they did. And was the aeroplane registered in the public register, or was the deed drawn? Yes, it was. So in that instance, the day on which the deed was drawn is the day on which the ownership was transferred to the new owner. So remember, it's really, really important for you to remember that all these 3 things have to be present, and the day on which these 3 things were realized is the day on which ownership was acquired by the new owner.